Hello everyone, this is my video assignment number 2 for Strength and Conditioning, and my name is Kaylan Puett. First, we're going to start off with our general warm-up. For this workout video, you will see my client here. Her name is Peyton Jo, and she will be completing a 2-minute incline walk on the treadmill to start off the general warm-up. Warm-ups are great to increase the heart rate, which will better the blood flow around the body system to be able to pump the blood to every muscle being used. Another reason is that it activates and primes the muscles and the nerves to be able to connect better, which in return will improve the efficiency of the workout that will follow the warm-up. During this video, you will see many modalities being used to increase the agility of the athlete as well as the power and the speed that the athlete can perform. With this being said, athletes who perform these exercises are really at risk for injury, and especially the lower body. In order to decrease this risk, we must prepare the muscles to be able to complete the strenuous exercises that will follow. With these specific athletes, it's super important to make sure that all the muscles are primed instead of just concentrating on one muscle at a time. Another reason that we want to start off with a walk is to get all of those muscles warmed up and the body temperature increased. In doing so, this will increase the elasticity in the muscles and prepare them for this stretch reflex. Lastly, with the exercises that we will be performing today, the intensity will be high on pretty much all of the exercises. With this being said, we want to make sure that we prepare the heart for the same intensity. We do this by warming up the body and increasing the demand of blood that the muscles need slowly instead of jumping right in. After the incline walk, we do want to still increase the heart rate a little bit more. Since the walk is kind of a light intensity, we want to bring the heart rate up just a touch more before we hop into some intense motions. So here we have her starting with a jog as well, just to gradually increase the heart rate and keep warming up the body after an inclined walk. A jog is really good because, like I said, we are getting every single muscle involved. However, this is a higher intensity and the muscles will get warmed up a lot faster with the jog rather than the walk. And after the 1 minute of the jogging, we do want to go ahead and move into a little bit more of a harder workout. So here we are having her jump up and down just like you're doing a jump rope. You can use a regular jump rope in this, which will increase the weight in your hand and also give you a little bit more of a coordination aspect of this warm-up exercise. However, we didn't have one available today, so you can always just substitute by pretending that it's in your hand and doing those little hops as if you were going over the jump rope. After that, we went ahead and moved into what I call T-jacks. And just like a jumping jack, except whenever you come down, you are coming into a squat. The reason that we picked this warm-up exercise is because we want to make sure that the legs are really warmed up before going into any jumping motions or anything like that. As well as the legs getting warmed up, this also includes the arms coming out to a horizontal reach, which will stretch the chest and warm up the shoulders. Next, we're going to move on to the specific warm-up. Now that we already worked to get our heart rate up and our body temperature up, we want to focus on really getting those muscles that are going to be used in the workout ready to go. Here you can see we started out with just body weight squats. I didn't have the client do these in a fast motion because we will be performing many explosive exercises. Therefore, I wanted to get those muscles ready for quicker movements rather than a slow progression. With a move like a bodyweight squat, we're warming up all the lower body muscles, including the quadriceps, the hamstrings, the adductor muscles, all the gluteus muscles. And after 30 seconds of those, we want to move on to leg swings. These are going to be a dynamic stretch used to mainly open up the adductor and the abductor muscles. Here the hip flexors are also targeted as she swings the leg forward. As you can see here, my client did use my shoulder to help with the balance. It is important to remember that during the dynamic stretching and the warm-up phases, balance is no longer our prime focus. Here we just want to make sure that the muscles are getting warm. Therefore, we can always have a wall or a partner or anything around you just helping with that balance. After 30 seconds on one side, we did switch to the other side to do 30 more seconds. Being as the balance is being helped by my arm, we want to make sure that the range of motion is as best as possible. As you can see, my client is going as far in as possible and as far out as possible while maintaining the stretch into the hip flexors. You can also cue your client to either point their toe or flex their foot just to get that better stretch. After 30 seconds of those, you can see us moving on to a toe swipe motion. Here I have the client walking forward and swiping her hands forward with every other step. This will elongate the hamstring muscle as well as stretch the calves. It can also even help with back injury or pain as you're stretching out those lower lumbar muscles. We also want to make sure that they're alternating legs to get both of the legs the exact same stretch. If we do one at a time, we may end up stretching one more than the other, causing a risk for injury later in the exercises. When you do speed and agility exercises, we are heavily using our hamstrings as well as our quadricep muscles, so we want to make sure that each and every one of them are stretched out and warmed up before the exercise begins. After 30 seconds of those, I had the client move on to a quick feet into a vertical jump. Like I said, many speed and agility exercises are in this workout, so we want to make sure that we're warming up the quick muscle fibers as well. Here I'm having her focus on quick movements of the feet with also jumping right after. This will not only get the muscles ready for quick action, but it'll also prepare the client mentally to make sure they're going as fast as possible. After 30 seconds of those, we're going to move on to the next exercise. The next exercise we had in this workout plan was the high toe touch walks. You will see the high toe touch walks highly in a lot of sports related warm-ups. The purpose of this exercise is mainly to improve the mobility. It also will do a subtle ab work as they crunch up in each and every rotation that she does. This will also continue to stretch out the hamstrings and get them ready for strenuous activities, as well as synchronize the muscles together to aid in the unstable or irregular body positions that she may encounter during this workout. After completing 30 seconds of those high toe touch walks, we are going to continue to move on to warming up the upper body. Here you can see the client start with big arm circles going to the front of her body. This will mainly work on the anterior side of the shoulders as she stretches them back. This will also warm up the posterior deltoids as they aid in helping her move her arms forward. While she feels her shoulders warming up, the blood will begin to move towards the shoulders, the triceps, and the biceps. This is important because of the exercises that are going to follow the warm-up. Many of the upper body exercises will include all the big muscle groups, just as she's warming up here. The shoulders, the triceps, and the biceps are going to be really important in doing some of these exercises. After 30 seconds of going to the front, she did change to the back. It's important to make sure that the range of motion going forward and the range of motion going backward are all warmed up synchronously. In doing so, this will lower the risk of injury in her shoulder joint, as it may be a site that is at risk, especially in the power movements. After 30 seconds going backwards, she's going to move on to what we call mountain climbers. Mountain climbers are one of the best exercises that you can do, especially when warming up for an agility power workout plan. This is because it targets not only balance, but also agility, coordination, strength, flexibility, and also increases the blood circulation throughout the body. As we can see, there's many forms of stabilization throughout the body during this exercise. It also loosens up the knee and joint ankles, as that is very important in high intensity exercises, and enhances the overall function of the quads, hamstrings, glutes, lower back, and shoulders. After she completes 30 seconds of those, we are going to move on to the three-way plank hop. The three-way plank hop is a very intense warm-up exercise. However, it is very good for warming up many different things. As you can see, the stability in her obliques is causing them to warm up all of the oblique muscles as well as the transverse abdominis muscles. In addition to the muscles being warmed up, it also gets the ankle and the knee joints ready for impact, as there will be jumping as well as high intensity fast exercises that will require stability of these joints to lower the risk of injury. After getting our body completely warmed up, we're ready to move on to the main segment of this workout plan. First, we're going to start with modality number 1, lower body plyometrics. For these two exercises, we are going to complete 5 sets of 5. The first exercise that we are going to begin with are broad jumps. For the first variation of this exercise, we are going to start with the broad jumps in a continuous formation. As you can see me here, I'm starting out by showing the client how to perform the broad jump in a continuous motion. With the broad jumps, we want to make sure that they're an explosive motion. Here you can see the amount of foot contact onto the floor of my client is as short as possible. While doing this explosive movement, we're recruiting the hamstrings, the quadriceps, the calves, and also the upper body and the arms as they aid in the explosiveness of the legs. For the second variation of this exercise, we have the broad jumps with a change in direction. Just like the first variation, we're making sure that we do this as fast and explosive as we can. And as I just demonstrated, we will change directions in the middle of the repetitions. Here you can see the client doing 3 of the jumps, switching directions in a pivot motion, and completing 2 back-to-back as well. The broad jump exercise is great for athletes competing in any type of track and field, football, and even basketball, as it is an explosive exercise moving forward. However, with the change in direction, this is especially good for those sports that I just listed, because in most of those sports, we're not doing a continuous motion forward at all times. It is likely that we're changing direction halfway through the explosiveness. For the third exercise, we have broad jumps with stabilization. In this variation, you can see me start by showing the client how to perform the exercise. This one will be the same as the other broad jumps, however, we will stay in the stabilized position for a few more seconds than we were used to before. In doing this, we will decrease the intensity of the exercise. Since the stabilization will decrease the intensity of the exercise, you will likely see this in athletes who are first starting out in their training. In this variation, it is important for the athlete to learn how to get off of their feet as fast as possible while maintaining stabilization through their core. You may also see benefits in any sports that require a sticking of the landing in this exercise. Next, we have body weight burpees. For the first variation, we're going to start with half burpees. Here you can see me start by showing the client how to perform the exercise. Here we want to start with an explosive jump up, and right as we land, they want to go ahead and land those arms down, shoot back their legs as fast as possible, come back in, and then go back straight into that vertical jump. While doing the half burpee, we really want to focus on the speed and agility of the motion. As you can tell, my client is going at max speed, just creating a full body speed motion here. Since there is a rapid flexion and extension throughout the body, it teaches the body to learn how the force production from the core can go to the upper and lower extremities. For the second variation of the burpees, we're going to complete the half burpees with the walkout. For the half burpee, With the walkout, you can see that the beginning of the exercise is similar to the first variation, where we pop up in an explosive vertical jump and then go straight down in the landing position with the feet tucked in still. The difference here is we're going to, instead of popping back the legs in a swift motion, we're going to have them walk the legs back and jump them back in. Since we are taking the jump back out of this motion, this variation will be slightly easier than the first variation. This will be important in those that are first starting in their agility workout plans and may not have the agility and coordination down yet. With a burpee, it requires a lot of hand and eye coordination as well as the muscles like the glutes, the quads, the hamstrings, as well as the chest, shoulders, and triceps all working together to perform the motion synchronously. With this being said, here we have the client doing it as fast as possible to increase the speed and agility of the motion. For the third variation, we have the half burpee with a tuck jump. Here I start off by showing the client how to perform the half burpee with the tuck jump. As the first variation, we're going to have them jump up slightly, go back down, shoot the legs back, shoot them back in as fast as possible. And the difference here, you can see right as she comes up into a tuck jump. A tuck jump is where you're going to explode through your calf muscles and make sure that you get the knees all the way up as high as possible while maintaining a straight back. In adding the tuck jump to this exercise, we definitely make the intensity a lot harder, which will in return increase the power aspect of this movement. Being as we're adding in the tuck jump, the need for speed is definitely increasing in this variation. Therefore, doing these will improve the performance of mainly basketball players as well as soccer players to get more of an explosive feel out of the jump. Next, we are going to move on to modality number 2, resisted sprint drills. With these exercises, we are going to complete 5 sets of 5 repetitions. For this first exercise, we're going to start with resisted high knees to a sprint. For the resisted high knee to sprint, you see that there's a football onto the ground right here, and that is just to mark our place. As he starts here, he's going to start with high knees, and the second he reaches that football, he's going to blast off into a sprint. As you can see, there is a bungee attached to him, and doing so, this is adding a lot of resistance to his motions, especially once he hits that football and sprints forward. The high knees are important to add some agility to the exercise and improve the sport's athletic performance in the client. These types of exercises are commonly looked at in football and also a lot of soccer players, that it's really important to be able to do fast feet motions and also keep speed up as they hit a certain point in the sport. Another reason that we have the marker there is to have the cue to switch from one motion to the other motion as fast as he can and get the explosive power as well. For the second variation of this exercise, we are moving on to resisted plyo jumps to sprint. In this variation, he sets up just like the first variation, except instead of the high knees, he is completing plyo jumps before he hits that football. Here he's exploding through one leg and coming across his body from one elbow to the other opposite knee, and then once he hits that football again, just exploding into that sprint as fast as possible. This variation is more commonly looked at in sports like volleyball, as well as basketball and tennis, as he is exploding off one leg, which is more common in those sports than it is in football as well, but you can also use this as a football drill. Resisted sprints are mainly to aim to increase the athlete's running velocity by overloading the muscles that are used in sprinting and really putting a focus on all of those muscles as they're being pulled back. For the third variation of this exercise, we are going to complete resisted lateral shuffle to the sprint. In this variation, you can see that he's facing the camera and he's also doing a lateral shuffle. He was instructed to come as far low as possible to maintain a low posture, and again, once he hits that football on the ground, he's going to sprint forward. In these exercises, you can use anything to mark the floor. It can be a cone or anything like that to make sure that the athlete knows when to transition into the sprint. However, here we used a football, and as you see, he is being pulled back by that string, especially at the end of that sprint. This one is really important for basketball players as they typically are not looking in the direction that they need to go once they switch from a lateral shuffle into a sprint. For instance, if the athlete is starting in a defensive mode and blocking a player and his teammate gets the ball, he can go transition into a fast sprint. This is going to elicit greater neural activation as he's getting pulled back by the bungee cord, as well as recruit more fast twitch muscle fibers that will be useful when he's using it in the actual game. For the second exercise of this modality, we are going to move on to resisted plyo jump with sprint drills. First, we're starting with fast feet into lateral plyo jumps. For this exercise, he is going to be facing the camera as well, and as you can see, the bungee is still attached to him, causing that resistance and pulling him back in the opposite direction that he wants to go. In these ones, he's going to start out with a couple fast feet on one side, and then quickly hop to the other side in a lateral jump, and then again back into those fast feet as fast as he can. As this is an agility exercise, he's really working on his footwork here. Like many football players, they want to be able to go from one side to the other and then return to a sprint or a fast feet explosiveness. For the second variation of this exercise, we are going to do front to back feet into lateral plyo jumps. With this variation, the setup is going to be similar. However, instead of doing the fast feet, he is going from front to back, switching his feeding and then going and doing a lateral side hop and then going back into those front and back motions. Here again, we are working on the footwork and making sure that the eyes and the feet are connecting, which will be important when in the game and defending other players, especially in basketball and in football as well. With the resistance exercises, especially when it is a bungee, the further that he gets away, the harder it is. We like to attach this to a pole or something that will be around hip length or hip height, so that way it is a direct pull on his middle of his body. You can also do this exercise with a trainer holding the end of the other bungee cord, however it is a little bit difficult. But if you want to go a further distance other than just the few hops that we show here, that is definitely an option if you are trying to do that. Lastly, for the third variation, we are going to complete side-to-side plyo jumps into lateral plyo jumps. For the second variation, we can see the side-to-side lateral hops. Here he is going to be exploding almost like a ski jump except within a unilateral way. So he's going side to side, and then right in he goes to the opposite side on the outside corner. He is going to jump into that other side to a lateral plyo jump. These are really good because of the coordination that it takes to be able to go from side to side without stopping, and going as fast as you can definitely be difficult. This will also require a lot of balance. Instead of like the other ones where we're just kind of staying up and down, these ones have a lot of motion in between the upper body and the lower body, causing a little bit of difficulty. However, it is really good when working in a full body exercise or a full body sport that he needs to have upper body and working lower body together. Now we are going to move on to modality number 3, battle rope power exercises. For each exercise in this modality, we completed 5 sets of 15 seconds each. Battle rope waves. For the first variation, we are going to start with alternating ropes, kneeling to standing waves. As I start here by showing the client how to perform the exercise, you can see that I start by placing my knees both on the ground to help with the core stability while we start the exercise. Here, as the client starts, you can see her going by one knee down and following with the other and coming straight back up. While she does this, she's also alternating the ropes by swinging them up and down alternately. As she does both together, we're working on the coordination of the upper body and the lower body working synergistically. These are also a great exercise to help with athletic performance. It targets the shoulders, the arms, and the core, but with the kneeling, it also targets those lower body muscles such as the quadriceps, the hamstrings, and the calf muscles as they explode up as fast as they can. Since there's a lot happening in this exercise, coordination is a big deal during this exercise. With that being said, with an exercise like this that demands a lot of coordination, it will lead to helping the agility and enhancing the athletic performance overall. This can also be applied to football players, basketball players, and as well as even track players, as it's exerting quick bursts of power and speed together to perform the exercise. For the second variation, we're going to move on to double ropes with kneeling to standing waves. As you see me starting out by performing the exercise to show the client exactly how to perform the exercise, you can see it's very similar to the first variation. However, in this one, instead of alternating those ropes one at a time, we're using the double rope slam. Just like the first variation, we're going to start with the knees on the floor and bring one of them up each at a time. Since we are not alternating the ropes, this takes a little bit of the coordination out. However, it increases the power and the speed that it takes since we also have to slam both of the arms at the same time within the same period as in the first variation, they were having enough time to swap those arms out. This will lead to a greater force output of the upper body, strength, and power as she slams both of those weighted ropes down at the same time. For the third variation, we're going to move on to paused ropes with the kneeling to standing waves. Here you see me demonstrating the movement. To start this one, it is also similar to the first and second variation. This one, we are going to keep the second variation double-armed slam. However, when we go back down, we're going to stop the ropes and come up and down as fast as possible. This variation is a little bit more complex than the first and second. Although it may look a little bit easier or less complex, it definitely has many moving components that we'll take a look at. First, you can see that we start with 3 slams of the ropes. This will increase the demand for power in a repetitive motion. Then, after the rope slams, she goes directly into going down and up in the standing to kneeling phase. Therefore, this variation is very complex because the first part of the exercise, she's using the power aspect of it. She's slamming the ropes down as hard as she can and exerting as much power as she can with her upper body. After she completes the power part of the exercise, she goes into the kneeling to standing position, which will increase the speed and the quickness of her athletic performance. This exercise is great for athletes who not only have to have speed and agility to be able to perform their sport appropriately, but they also have to have a sufficient amount of power as well. Moving on to the second exercise for the battle ropes, we're going to be doing slams. To start out the slams, we're going to start with a double rope slam. First, I start out by showing the client how to perform the exercise of the double rope slams. As you see, I bent at the knees to make sure we have a little bit of the dip formation to start off the exercise. Here, I'm instructing the client to get a little bit lower into her legs to make sure that we're maintaining stability through the lower legs as well. Battle rope exercises are mainly looked at as a power exercise. And while this is not a false statement, it also can be looked at as a quickness drill. Here, I'm instructing the client to go as fast as she can to exert that power. If she were only to do 1 slam or maybe even 2 or 3 slams, there would be more power being exerted by her upper body. However, doing it over and over again will show a sport athletic performance as well. This is because in many sports, you'll see that the athlete does have to stay in this position with their knees bent and them ready to explode through their lower body, as you see with a football player lining up for defense. For the second variation, we're going to go ahead and move on to the alternating rope slams. For the alternating rope slams, I have a different client going to perform the exercise just to show a better representation. Here I started off by showing him how to complete the exercise, but as you can see, he is an athlete and he does go a little bit quicker than most. With this being said, it is the same setup as the double rope slam, in which he has his feet a little bit wider than his shoulder width apart, and as fast as he can, he will go ahead and slam each rope one at a time up and down. Like I stated before, battle rope slams are great for power, but also speed. Here you can see him going as fast as he can while still trying to keep up the power. But as you can see, in the beginning he was super powerful, and right there he had to take a quick break. So if you're looking for more of a power exercise, we want to shorten the time of this exercise. However, the power and the speed both go hand in hand in this exercise and work really, really well for those athletes that need a little bit of both in their athletic performance. For the last variation of this exercise, we're going to move on to the side-to-side rope slams. To set up this exercise, it's just like the other two variations. We want to make sure that both of the feet are about shoulder width apart. And as you can see, he is pivoting a little bit with each side just to get as much force output as he can on each slam. This exercise is great in targeting the core muscles especially. With the rotational twist, it demonstrates many sports performances that you'll see in real life sports. With this being said, if you're working with an athlete that is working on a rotational performance, power, or speed, this is a great exercise for them. A good thing to keep in mind with this exercise as well is that you want the client to move a little bit upward so that each slam does have a little bit of slack. With this client, we had him come in just a few steps, and as he slammed the rope, we wanted to make sure that he had the full rotational twist of his abdominals in order to get all the engagement of all those core muscles. And as you can see, he slams it with his hands a little bit behind his quadriceps. Next, we are going to move on to modality number 4, upper body plyometrics with equipment. For each exercise in this modality, we completed 5 sets of 15 seconds each. This first exercise is going to be medicine ball slams. For the first variation, we're going to demonstrate the medicine ball front slam. Here you want to start with a medium to heavy weight for the client that is going to be performing the exercise. Here we started off with a 15-pound medicine ball, and as I demonstrated, we're going to have the ball come all the way up and slam as hard as possible to the front. Here, as we're only completing 5 repetitions, we want to make sure that the utmost power is being used with each slam. Another thing to notice is that each time that she slams the ball down, she's not only using just her upper body to slam, but rather a full body experience. The medicine ball front slams work the upper back, the core, the triceps, the glutes, quads, and hamstrings. This is being used all at the same time to be able to slam the ball as powerful as possible to the ground. Some common mistakes you may see in the front medicine ball slam is that the client or the person performing the skill is only slamming the ball with their upper body. This will be mainly causing a lot of injuries due to the back not being able to be supported by the legs. So we want to make sure that the back is being supported by not only the core, but also by the legs as they come down into the slam and lift the weight up with their legs as well. For the second variation, we're going to move on to the medicine ball slam side to side. Here, you can see me demonstrating to the client how to set up for the side-to-side medicine ball slam. Here, it's going to be similar to the first one as the legs are going to be placed a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. We want to make sure that the medicine ball is coming all the way up above the head to be able to create a greater force of power. With the side-to-side medicine ball slam, we are engaging the same muscles as the first one. However, it's putting more emphasis on the oblique muscles and the transverse abdominis muscles as the power is being exerted from the side. Here, you do want to make sure that you're bending your legs a little bit more as you pick up the weight and as you slam it down for the greater force output of the power behind the exercise. For the third variation, we are going to show the kneeling medicine ball slams. Here you can see me starting off by placing my knees on the ground about shoulder width apart and having the medicine ball straight up over my head. As I come down, I'm forcefully exerting a crunch motion while I slam the ball as hard as possible. As my client sets up to do this, I did make sure to let her know to watch out for the medicine ball. As with this exercise, that is one of the main mistakes that I see, is that as you come down, since it is a powerful movement, the ball might come up to hit you in the face. So just be aware of that, and also might want to pick up a heavier weight as long as the form is not affected. In this variation, since we are taking out the lower half of the lower body working in this motion, it will have a slighter lower power output. However, it will be more targeted on the upper body. This may be good in some athletes who don't necessarily need a lot of lower body, but mainly in the upper body power. A good cue to let your client know is not only to focus on the slam of the upper body, but to really focus on crunching the core together to use the core for more of a force output for the power movement. For the second exercise in this modality, we are going to be performing the chest press medicine ball throws. First, we'll start off with the medicine ball chest press throw to the ground. We are going to be completing 5 sets of 5 repetitions. For this chest press throw, we want to make sure that the legs are going to be placed about shoulder width apart. We're going to have the medicine ball completely retracted up into the body. This can be done by instructing the client to retract their shoulder blades as well as keep those elbows tucked to the sides of their body. Here you can see the slow, eccentric, and fast concentric motions here as she explodes the chest muscles to press that ball to the floor. Here you want to make sure that the legs are a little bit more bent than the client is expressing here. However, this is only to keep the core and the middle to lower back stabilized throughout the exercise. Although this exercise is mainly focusing on the explosiveness of the chest muscles, it also includes a lot of the other assistive upper body muscles as well. For the second variation, we're going to move on to the medicine ball chest press throw in the air. Here I start by showing the client how to perform the exercise by laying on the ground with my feet forward, and here you'll just see my elbows are very tucked to the center of my body and they're not too flared out. You want to go ahead and push with your chest muscles the ball all the way up into the air, and here you can see we are switching out for her to start. This exercise is meant to be a very powerful exercise as well, and we want to make sure that we're exploding through those chest muscles, especially since we're only completing 5 reps. The difference between this variation from the first variation is since we are going in the air with the ball, she is defeating gravity, therefore she is pushing up a little bit more weight, and it may be a little more challenging through those chest muscles. For the third variation, we're going to move on to the medicine ball chest press throw to a partner. Here you'll see that the client was switched out for a different client just due to the availability of equipment in my gym. My first client wasn't strong enough to push this ball in an explosive manner. Therefore, we do have Scott coming in to show us how to do this exercise. For this one variation, we have both of the people standing up. Most likely your partner will be just a friend or a trainer that is helping you work out. With this one, we're doing the exact same motion as to the floor and up in the air. However, since we are exerting the force horizontally, this will be more used in a lot of sports. You'll see it in a lot of football players using defense or pushing against their opposing players to be able to perform the sport properly. Modality number 5, agility ladder, lower body agility. For each exercise in this modality, we will do 5 sets of going back and forth through the agility ladder. For the first exercise, we are going to start with forward agility speed steps. The first variation is 1 step forward speed drill. First, I start by showing the client how to perform the exercise. Here you'll see me switch sides since this ladder is a little bit short. We want to make sure that we get 2 quick bursts of the steps. Here you'll see in each box we have only 1 foot going in, and as we proceed to the next box, we flip the leg that is being used and place each alternating foot inside the box. This is going to help with quickness and a lot of agility in a lot of sports that require quick feet. For the second variation, we're going to move on to the forward steps with 2 feet in each box. Here, as I start the setup of this exercise, you'll see that the agility is still laying flat onto the ground, and you'll see that we are moving in the same direction as the first variation. However, instead of just having 1 foot in each box, we want to make sure that both feet get to hit each box of the ladder. We are also going back and forth just like the first variation, and we want to focus on speed and agility as we go through these, but mainly just getting through there as fast as possible. This will also help in a lot of sports like football, especially when they have to go really, really fast around players and work on their footwork as well, as they must be precise in the placement of their foot. For the third variation of this exercise, we are going to complete the forward steps with 2 steps forward and 2 steps back. Here you can see the client start by doing kind of like the second variation where we're having both feet hit each box alternately. However, in this one, instead of just going forward and going straight through the ladder, we want to increase the agility that is required for this exercise by having her go to the second box, come back to the first box, and then she will continue to the third, come back to the second, and etc. This one is a very complicated motion, which may take some practice from some athletes, especially if this is their first time doing it. Here she has worked on some agility, so she does have this drill a little bit down, but it will work on the quick feet of an athlete and the precision of the coordination of her footwork. Always remember that when we're working with the agility ladder, especially with the forward steps, that we're focusing on being as fast as we can and exploding through those minor muscles in the legs. For the second exercise, we are going to show agility ladder hop drills. Our first variation are going to be in and out hops. Here you could see that I was fixing the ladder just in the beginning. We want to make sure that the ladder is as straight as possible to make sure that we aren't going at a crooked angle, which could cause a lot of injuries in clients as well as just mess up the drill. Here we're going to go ahead and start outside of the ladder, hop with both feet in the first box, come back out in a diagonal formation, and then enter into the second box. This will be continued through the entire agility ladder, and then we'll return back to the start point by going in the opposite direction. This will be able to train both directions of the athlete while they have their feet together. Modality number 6, closed agility drills with cones. For this modality, we completed 5 sets of each drill. For the closed cone drills, we're going to start with weave drills. The first variation is weave in and out with fast feet. Here you can see the cones that are evenly separated in a zigzag formation. Here we are instructing the client to go as fast as she can running through those cones. we are having her go all the way through the cones and switching directions and coming back. This will increase the speed that she's able to do in a longer period of time, just like she would have to do in some type of a sport like soccer or even some track and field events. Since we are instructing this client to go with very small motions, this is going to be really good for her footwork. Again, just like the ladder drills, we want to make sure that those feet are able to come up and down as fast as they can, especially in those soccer drills when we're dribbling the ball through the field. With the second variation, we are going to move on to the weave in and out with fast feet and a side shuffle. With this variation, we are having her almost skip in the lateral shuffle formation, go with her fast feet in a 3 or 4 step pattern, and then continue to the next cone. Here we can see that she's moving very, very fast through the cones in order to get to the end as quick as possible. Along with agility, this really works the speed of the client and her footwork, just like the first variation. However, with the lateral shuffle, this may be more prevalent in a basketball setting or a football setting that they need to go from one area to the other very, very fast. However, this can be used for soccer as well, just the same in defending the ball, as well as switching directions on an opponent. This can be very helpful with that in a game sense. Here we want to instruct the client to go as fast as possible and to make sure that they are hitting each point without skipping over a cone. For the last variation of this exercise, we did the weave in and out lateral shuffle hops. Here we did 5 sets of going all the way through the 9 cones and coming back. And as you could see, as I demonstrated the exercise, instead of doing the fast feet on each side or through the cones, we made this one to where it's almost a lateral shuffle all the way through the cones as fast as you can. As you can see with my client, at the beginning, she started off slow, trying to get her foot bearings, but as she went through the cones, her speed was able to get a little bit faster towards the end. You will see this a lot in athletes who are still learning how to generate speed in the beginning of the drill. For the next exercise, we are going to be moving on to the 5-cone speed drills. For the first variation, the 5-cone speed drill is going to be with the sprinting formation. Here we have 5 cones set up. 4 of them are going to be creating a box, and the 5th one is going to be laid in the center of all of those cones. Here, as you can see, I have the client returning to the middle cone every single time. Since this is a closed cone drill, it is known that the client knows exactly what she's going to be completing before starting the exercise. Here she is able to execute the speed and sprint in each direction as fast as she can without thinking about the mental part of it. This can be beneficial in the clients who are really just working on getting their speed up and they mainly have that mental state intact. This can also improve her performance in the sense of formation as well. For the second variation, we have the 5-cone drill with back pedal. Just like the first variation, we have the cone set up in just the exact same way. However, instead of her sprinting back and forth, we have her sprinting to the first cone, backpedaling to the middle cone, and then going back to the second cone. This is a little bit different for her agility sense. Instead of just turning directions, she will keep her body faced in the same direction. However, backpedaling to the middle cone will increase her speed and performance in being able to switch directions without looking away from a ball or a player that she needs to keep her eye contact on. This is a little bit more of a complex motion, and it may be a little bit more difficult for the player to get this under control. However, it is very, very useful in anything like a volleyball when she needs to come back but still keep her body in the same direction, as well as basketball or football players that need to keep their eyes on the opposing players. For the next variation, we are going to move on to the 5-cone drill with a lateral shuffle. For this last variation, we have the cone set up just like the first and second variation, and we still are keeping the sprint to the cone. After the sprint to the cone, she will lateral shuffle back to the middle cone. This one is especially good for basketball players who need to side shuffle for defense as well as change direction and speed. As you can see, she's sprinting as fast as she can to the cone and then kind of taking her time shuffling to the back. Here, you do want to instruct the client to stay a little bit low, just as they would in a normal basketball game. However, we do want to make sure that the agility is stayed intact. This is a closed cone drill, so she knew exactly what she was doing, which will improve her performance and her form as she does those lateral shuffles. After all that hard work, we're going to move on to our cool down. Cool downs are super important for any and all athletes. From people who are just starting out in the gym to athletes who have been training their entire life, cool downs are one of the most important things following the exercise. In a cool down, you'll gradually recover your heart rate and slow it down so that the heart is not coming to a complete stop right after it had a very fast heart rate. We want to slowly slow it down and not put so much pressure on it on going back to the resting heart rate. As we slow down the heart rate, it'll slowly get to that resting heart rate, which will be the end of the cool down. Even though cool downs are great for everybody, they may be most important for athletes because they exert a lot of power and get their heart rate really high during their workouts, their games, and even their competitions where they go compete at their best abilities. Here we had her walk on a treadmill for 1 minute. And after that, she's going to move on to some stretching. First, starting out with a little bit of a dynamic stretch as she holds it a little bit longer than she would on a warm-up. But these are some knee tucks. We want to make sure that she is pulling her knee up to her chest, really getting a good stretch in the hamstrings, as well as those quads as they come down and stabilize her on the floor. Here we did these for about 30 seconds, alternating each leg to make sure that we're getting the ample stretch in each and every one of those instead of just on one side. It is important that the athlete keeps their body straight up and down and keeps the core stabilized with the shoulders. So after 30 seconds of those, we're going to move on to windmill stretches. As you can see, she starts out in almost like a starfish position with her hands out parallel to the floor, and her feet are going to be about shoulder width apart, if not a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. We'll get a really good stretch in those hamstrings. And as she goes down, she is going to push her hips back to get a good stretch in her hamstring, just as you would see in a Romanian deadlift or something like that. We want to push the glutes back, get the good stretch in the hamstrings, and come all the way up to stabilize the core. And she completed these for 30 seconds as well before going into a shoulder stretch. This one is going to be a cross body shoulder arm stretch. Here she is going to pull her left arm all the way across her body and hold it with her right. Here you do want to make sure that the client is standing up straight. And as you can see right now, she is holding it in a static stretch. She did this for 15 seconds before moving on to the other arm. These ones are going to be really good for not only the anterior part of the shoulder, but primarily the back part of the shoulder, being the posterior shoulder, deltoids, and even the triceps as she pulls her arm all the way to the side. After 15 seconds on each side, we are going to make sure that we stretch out those chest muscles as she worked those very, very well today. Especially with those med ball tosses, we want to make sure that we stretch them out after especially some explosive motions, just to make sure that they are reset for the next time. Here she locked her hands together and she's going to push back and open up those chest muscles and give them a static stretch for 30 seconds so that her muscles can relax. After that 30 seconds, we are going to have a standing reach over. These ones are going to be really, really good for your latissimus dorsi muscles, as well as even the hip flexors as you come over the top of your body. Here she was kind of using her hip a little bit, so instructing her to stabilize those hips in place and only moving the torso is very beneficial for really stretching out those obliques as well as the lats, like I said earlier. And as well as the arm kind of coming up above you, you would also want to twist your head to the side as well, just to get a nice ample stretch in the neck muscles as well as it goes down the chain of your body. Here she completed 15 seconds on each side before moving into our next exercise. And here she is going to do something similar as in the warm-up exercises. However, since we are in the cool-down stages, it's very important to use these as a static stretch. Here you can see that she is holding the stretch out and the heel is being placed onto the ground with her toes up in the air. This is important to really get a good stretch through those hamstrings. And as you saw that when she changed her legs, she did stand up all the way to reset those muscles and to stabilize her right leg before moving into stretching her left. These are going to be good for your hamstrings, but also your glutes and your calves as you stretch those out. She did a nice little shake out there just to kind of relax all those muscles throughout and get them evened up. On this next exercise, we're going into a figure 4 stretch. Here you're going to place the outside of your ankle onto the anterior part of your knee. And we want to make sure that we are sitting back like a chair, as if a chair was behind you. And since she doesn't have the greatest balance here, it is okay to make sure that you have something to stabilize you as you do this stretch all the way through. So she was using my shoulder, but you can also use the wall or a chair or anything beside you to help you with the balance and to make sure that you get a ample and good stretch as you go down into that figure 4 stretch. After 15 seconds on each side of that one, we are going to move on to the calf stretch. This one is going to be also a static stretch, and as we use this one, we will need a wall or anything that you can kind of stabilize yourself through so that we're mainly focusing on that calf muscle being stretched out. Here you want to start with your toes on the ground, and as you go through the motion, you want to push your heel to the ground very slowly. We don't want to go fast in this, as you can pull a muscle very easily if those calves or even the hamstrings are tight. So in order to make sure that we're safe in this stretch, we want to make sure that we are moving through the motion very slowly and then holding it as we keep that heel to the ground. After 15 seconds of those on each side, we are going to move into a lunge stretch. Here, it's kind of different than a normal lunge where we keep a 90 angle. However, this is going to be a really good stretch, mainly for those hip flexors that did a lot of work in any type of jumping motions or plyometric motions during the workout. So we want to make sure that we are stretching out both sides to keep them even. Here we're going to keep the front foot flat onto the ground, and we're going to relax the back leg and kind of jut our bodies forward to get the stretch through the knee leg that is on the ground, through that hip flexor, as well as the hamstrings and the quadricep muscles. That's a great stretch for those lower body muscles that did a lot of work today. After 15 seconds on each side of those, we are going to move on to a seated rotational twist. Here you are going to instruct your client or yourself to be in a crisscross applesauce motion, and we want to get a very straight into the back. Keep your back straight. However, when we twist, we want to have one hand onto the floor to stabilize ourselves, as she just put her right hand down, and we're going to reach back with that other arm, the one that is furthest from the back. As we do this, this is a great stretch all the way through our core muscles, our back muscles, which did have a lot of pressure in any motions that especially had any weight attached to them. And also the motions that had a lot of twisting and turning, or any type of motions that had your body in a different way than a up and down motion. Here we are going to move on to the seated double-legged hamstring stretch. Here you're going to instruct your client that your legs are going to be completely straight and you don't want to see any bend in the knees. we want to make sure that we're locking everything out and going as far forward as possible. Here you can see that my client was struggling a little bit, and this may be due to any type of just tightness in your hamstring muscles or even your calf muscles or even your all the way up through your rectus spinae group of your back that may be causing this. So we just want to make sure that we are forward rolling as much as possible and grabbing those knees, ankles, or the toes, whichever phase that you are in. After those ones, we are going to move on to an adductor muscle stretch. Here we want to widen up our legs as far as comfortable. The toes are going to be up into the air and the heels are going to be resting on the ground. And as we keep our legs straight, we do want to place our hands on the back of our heads. However, we don't want to pull that head or neck viciously with our upper body, but instead just rest them up there to keep the posture as we bend forward and really get a good stretch in the adductor muscles. This one might be a little bit hard to do, especially if you've never done it before, but it is really good to make sure that the adductor muscles are limber for today's workout recovery and your next workout. And that is going to be all for my second video assignment. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.